Nō mai, haere mai, welcome. I'm Bruce Munro, and with me is International Relations Specialist, Professor Robert Patman, and this is Global Insight. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is the second largest country in Africa and renowned for its immense biodiversity and its vast mineral reserves. But it's a nation that has been in almost continual political and social crisis for most of the past 150 years. Now gripped by another outbreak of the Ebola virus, we ask, what hope is there for the Democratic Republic of the Congo? Welcome, Robert.
Good morning, Bruce.
What is the history and current state of the DRC?
The DRC has a troubled history, as your opening remarks suggested. And the troubles essentially began with the Belgian nation established a colonial presence in the DRC in the late 19th century. By 1960, the DRC, or the Congo as it was then known, did establish independence under Patrice Lumumba in 1960, but he was assassinated in 1961. It's rumoured the assassination was linked to the CIA. What we do know that the country was affected by Cold War superpower rivalry. In 1965, a military official, Mobutu, seized power, and Mobutu held, he was the paramount leader or dictator for 32 years. Eventually he fled from power following civil war in 1997, and the Democratic Republic, Mobutu had renamed the country as Zaire under his leadership, but it was called, after Mobutu was overthrown, the new era was, the country was known as Democratic Republic of Congo. But almost immediately after Mobutu's departure, the country was plunged into another very bloody civil war. Between 3 to 6 million people were killed between 1997 and 2003. And unfortunately, the 21st century hasn't brought much relief for the long-suffering population of Congo. And there's been a litany of armed factions fighting in eastern Congo. There's the M23, and there's also a group called the FLDR, a Houthi militia with links to Rwanda. And of course, the one participant in the fighting, of course, has been the Congolese government's military as well. So it's been a multi-sided civil conflict, and it's been, the epicenter has largely been in the eastern part of the country. And this is a huge country, Bruce. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is the equivalent of the size of Western Europe.
Wow. And you mentioned there these different armed factions that are fighting in the country. The US has imposed new sanctions on the commanders of some of these different groups. Do you think these sanctions will lead to the peace that Washington has been trying to bring about?
Well, to be fair, the Americans have been mediating before these sanctions were imposed, and I think it's a sign of frustration by Washington. And they've been quite even-handed. I mean, the two of the major antagonists have both been sanctioned, so they're not tilting to one side in that sense. I think the United States, this is a very important country. Continued fighting in the country has reverberations for neighbouring countries, Rwanda, Uganda. So, as a superpower, the United States would like to see the DRC return to a more peaceful situation. And also because the country has massive reserves, or immense mineral capabilities, I'm sure the United States would see economic possibilities if the country was much more stable than it currently is.
Right. And what part is politics playing in the latest outbreak of Ebola in the country? It's spreading from the DRC to neighbouring nations.
Yeah, I mean, the latest outbreak that you just referred to, Bruce, is the 17th outbreak of Ebola. But this has a particular strain. The World Health Organization made the announcement in the mid-May. The current strain of Ebola has killed 10 people and there's 223 other suspected deaths, and about 1,000 people who've been infected. This virus is transmitted through bodily fluids. It's very dangerous, and in a sense, the reason that the conflict is so it's exacerbating the situation because the outbreak has occurred in eastern part of Congo, the epicenter of the fighting, and unfortunately, if you look at countries which have experienced civil war on a long-term basis, many of the state services that we take for granted, like hospitals and ambulances, just do not exist. So many people have to go to a health centre on a motorbike, and they may be gravely ill. So in a sense, you could say that politics is driving this latest outbreak of Ebola, and was probably linked to the earlier outbreaks of Ebola. But this particular strain is worrying the World Health Organization because there is no vaccine or remedies to deal with it at the moment. So it's a very worrying situation.
So we have this huge country with immense mineral reserves, important biodiversity, but just riven by strife for so long, and the people very poor.
Yeah.
What hope is there for the future for the people of the DRC?
Well, I think its economic resources are a source of hope if only they can achieve better governance in that country. It has half of Africa's forests within its boundaries. It has enormous reserves of cobalt and other rare earths. In fact, China signed a huge deal with the Democratic Republic of Congo for a sizable share of its rare earth minerals. So, in short, the DRC, if it was more stable, could be a key country in the green transition that the world is going to have to undergo and is undergoing. It produces many of those minerals which are very important for high technology. But yeah, the problem does remain at the moment. I think the problems are exacerbated by, first of all, superpower rivalry between the United States and China. And I think both are vying to be influential in different ways in that country. China actually has been a long-term partner of the Democratic Republic, so it's probably better placed in the long term. But the Trump administration has also taken a keen interest. And the Trump administration is trying to claw back the advantage that China has established in rare earth minerals. China at the moment has about 90% of the world, access to about 90% of the world's rare earth minerals. So there's a sort of superpower element to this. But the other thing is, and it's most unfortunate, that the UN is probably at its weakest in the post-Cold War era. And without an authoritative international institution to mediate, it's all very well the US Treasury announcing the US was mediating and has sanctioned two parties. But how much credibility does the Trump administration carry as a disinterested player in a country which is so unstable? In short, the legitimacy of the UN is desperately needed in a situation like this, but the UN itself has been marginalised in the 21st century, problems associated with the use and abuse of the veto. So at the very time when the UN should be playing a mediating role, and it's tried to, but it's been constrained. So in the short term, things don't look promising, but I think, as Willy Brandt, a former German politician, once said, problems created by human beings can also be fixed by them. But at the moment, it seems to me there is not enough high-level international consensus on how to address these problems. And instead, there seems to be an attempt to exploit those problems, which is a tragedy for the country. So it's difficult to be optimistic in the short term. In the long term, if, and it's a big if, the Democratic Republic can achieve stability, I think it could look forward to a much more prosperous future for its people, its long-suffering people who've known nothing but turbulence and civil strife for the last 30 plus years.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you for watching. Catch us next time on Global Insight. Noho ora mai.